We're here tonight with Brett Hawes. He is a certified functional medicine practitioner and clinical holistic nutritionist with 17 years of clinical experience. I'm sure many of you know of him already. He runs an online clinic with a primary focus on chronic and complex digestive issues, hormone health, and autoimmune disease. Brett has also been lead faculty at the Institute of Holistic Nutrition for 14 years, where he now works as a student clinic advisor, and he's mentored close to 300 practitioners across North America. Today, he's here to talk to us about the perfect intake, how to turn casual conversations into paying clients without using coercion tactics or any sales techniques. So I'll leave it to him to get started and share all the goods with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Veronica. And I see some familiar faces or names. I can't see your faces right here, but good to see some of you on the call tonight. And let's jump right into it. I'm actually just going to share my screen with you. And if you can just let me know, everyone should be able to see that. So
Looking good.
Looking good? Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
And I guess maybe before we jump in, we should say if anyone has questions, if you want to pop them into the Q&A function in the webinar, and then we'll review those at the end.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the perfect intake, you can see the title, The Perfect Intake, How to Turn Casual Conversations into Paying Clients and a Thriving Practice without using...
Brett, it's still... Oh, there it is. It just popped up.
Okay.
A little bit of a lag.
Oh, it's okay. So welcome to tonight's webinar entitled The Perfect Intake, How to Turn Casual Conversations into Paying Clients and a Thriving Practice without using sleazy, sketchy, slick sales techniques and coercion tactics. I'm excited to share this with you for so many different reasons. And I think that when people think of the perfect intake, we always think of what am I going to do at the intake session to make it absolutely perfect. And what I'm going to show you tonight is your intake session actually starts from the very first time that you make contact with a prospective client. And so we're actually going to walk you from the front right the way through till you actually sit down for that intake. And this is being very well received by practitioners. This is a big stumbling block. A lot of the things we're going to talk about tonight are big stumbling blocks for a lot of people. And they were big stumbling blocks for me, to be perfectly honest. I always felt very uncomfortable. I'm not a salesperson. I don't really like the whole sales thing. And I know many of us are in that boat because we're here to help people, right? We're here to serve people. And a lot of us spend our time perfecting our craft, and then the business side of things kind of falls by the wayside. And so we actually never really get to scale up and serve as many people as we know that we should be serving. And I think that's a tragedy for a lot of practitioners. So I'm going to show you tonight the systems and maybe just talk a little bit more about the mindset and the mindset and the philosophy that goes into some of the stuff we're going to be talking about tonight. So thank you so much for the introduction, Veronica. I'll just do a lightning fast introduction for myself again. And I think without repeating anything, just to say that my focal area in practice is gut health, hormones, and autoimmune disease. I've kind of, worked my way into that niche or niches. I don't know if that's if there's a plural there. And that's over many, many years that I've kind of found myself in that wheelhouse. And I would say that probably 90% of my practice now is one or more of those things. Also the founder of Holistic Health Masterclass, which I'm sure a lot of you know about. We've got a podcast that's been going on for 5 years now on all sorts of topics. And more recently, co-founded the Practitioner Paradigm with my partner, Daniel Chang, who is also a very seasoned practitioner, also a very well-rounded individual when it comes to running a clinical practice as well, having run a very successful brick and mortar clinic in downtown Toronto for many years. So so that's a little bit about that. Before we start, I just want to be very clear on what we're here to learn and what we're not here to learn. So we are here to really learn how to build rapport and instill confidence from the very first time you meet your prospective client or people. We want to screen clients to ensure that they're the right fit and that they are committed. Okay, there's nothing worse than attracting the wrong types of clients into your practice and then just having a brutal time working with them, trying to keep them motivated, trying to keep them pumped up all the time. It's exhausting, and it's exhausting for you from an energetic level, and it honestly kills your business, right? So we want to make sure that we screen people when we get the right clients in. We want to enroll clients that are a pleasure to work with and make practice enjoyable. We want to present ourselves as professionals, right? So some of the things we're going to talk about tonight will help you to be more professional and to be more comfortable being professional, right? You know, this whole idea of faking it till you make it is great, but at some point we have to step into that, right? We want to be who we are, and we want to present ourselves as that professional in an authentic way. We're also here to learn some tools and techniques to help you book more clients and grow your business, right? Ultimately, that's a huge part of it. And I feel like it's a huge part that's actually lacking for a lot of practitioners, myself included. For many, many years, I did not focus on any of this stuff, and I had to hustle like all the time. So we're not here to learn about slick, sleazy, sketchy sales techniques. We're not here to learn about coercion or mind control tactics or anything like that. We're not going to be talking about closing the deal or making the sale or anything like that. I honestly can't stand a lot of the marketing jargon that's out there, because it's fine if you're, if you're a digital marketer or if you're selling something else. In our field, I just feel like it just comes off in a very bad way, personally. Okay, so before we get going here as well, I want you to just take a moment and maybe just take a couple of deep breaths, shut down everything, pay attention to what we're talking about. And I want to ask you some questions about your practice. These are rhetorical questions. These are for you to ask yourself. And how many clients are you enrolling each week into your practice? If you want, if you feel comfortable enough anyway, you can put these in the chat box. That's always interesting. And of course, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to do that as well. So anyone in the chat box, how many new clients are you enrolling every week? Any takers? Any takers? No? Okay. All good. No worries. Good question. Perhaps a better question is, how many new clients can you realistically onboard each week? And one of the questions I often ask practitioners is, I say to them, what would happen if I gave you 20 clients right now? And I can tell you that 100% of people tell me that they couldn't handle it, right? They could not handle it. They would just fold. And, think about that from a different perspective, right? Because what that really means, and the next question is, do we then have proper systems in place for processing our clients? I ran with no systems for years. Dare I say, more than half of the time that I've been in practice, I had no systems whatsoever, right? So if we don't have systems, that means we are going to be very inefficient. And inefficiency is the death of any type of consultant, because your time is precious. Time is money, unfortunately, and the more time that you're spending on doing admin and doing all of this other stuff, and having no systems, that ultimately eats into you being able to grow your business, right? Plain and simple. Are your clients coming back to see you? Or do they disappear after 1, 2, 3 sessions and they're gone? Right? Another big problem. If we don't have retention, and this is not about stringing people along. This is not about giving someone, oh, you come in and see me and here's a digestive enzyme. Meanwhile, you've got, leaky gut and IBD and adrenal issues and whatever, and we're just stringing them along. It's not about that. It's, are they coming back? Are they getting the benefits? Are they seeing the value in what you're offering? And are you getting those results with people where they're sticking around with you? Okay. Big one here. Are you being properly compensated for the time that you're investing into your practice? Big one. Big one. Right? If we're spending all of our time on this administrative stuff with no systems, and then we're spending 10, 15, 20 hours on a protocol, and we're charging $100 or $150 up front, when you start crunching those numbers, you might be quite shocked to realize that you're actually working for maybe $10 an hour, $5 an hour, or something like that. And unfortunately, I've been in the position where I've had the luxury of speaking to hundreds, if not thousands, of practitioners before they get into practice, when they first start practice, when they've been in it for a little while, and then when they drop off out of practice. And the sad thing for me is that there are so many practitioners, and not just nutritionists, right? There's practitioners in all across the board that are having such a hard time with this that they throw in the towel, or they never ever move from having a hobby practice to actually having a full-time business. And that's a tragedy, because I know that if you're anything like me, I know that you have been called to serve people, you've been called to help people, and there's no reason why you cannot be properly compensated, or you should not be compensated properly for the time and the effort that you're putting in. Okay, so it's a serious question for people to ponder there. How would you rate your work-related stress levels? I think everyone suffers from stress to some degree, but the great irony of us being in the holistic space here is that so many practitioners are burnt out. And so we actually we sacrifice ourselves to help other people. And that's really no way to practice. It's no way to live. I've been there. It's happened to me before. It's a brutal journey, right? So by having a lot of the things that we're talking about tonight, and we only have a certain amount of time to cover things here, but I want to give you some insight into how you can maybe alleviate some of that stress by putting some of these systems in place, by thinking differently about how you're approaching your practice. So do you feel like you have enough free time? And all in the same kind of wheelhouse here, do you have a healthy work-life balance? Okay, so we need to be able to be practicing what we preach to our clients in our practice. So my practice back then, this was me 100%, okay, furious. Just like 14 hours a day, 16 hours a day, creating content, just hustle, 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 no templates, no systems in place. And honestly, it was absolutely exhausting. I actually took a break from practice at one point. I took a whole year and I didn't practice at all. I didn't see any clients because I just hit this burnout stage where I was like, man, what am I doing here? I can hardly make ends meet. I'm killing myself making content and creating stuff and then I'm spending hours and hours and hours drafting, customized and personalized protocols for people. And while the rewards that I was getting from the clinic side of things, from helping people and seeing those results, it's amazing, right? This was really amazing for me to see that and to still experience that. And I feel like that's one of the biggest drivers that kind of keeps me going, right? Is just seeing those results and seeing those transformations for people. But what I realized at the same time was that I was sacrificing so much of myself, of my health, of my mental health. My first marriage took a huge beating because I spent so much time at work. And and I had to kind of sit down with myself and be like, holy smokes, what are you doing, right? Do you want to quit? Do you want to quit forever? And I couldn't let it go. I couldn't quit. But now, when I think of my practice now and I just look at what I'm doing, I have a cloud-based practice. It's 100% online. This was pre-pandemic by many years. I was working in a pretty sweet clinic downtown in Toronto, and I just had like 75% of my clients all of a sudden, they wanted to see me online. And they said, can we just see you on Skype at the time, right? Zoom wasn't even around back then. And so here I was doing all these Skype sessions and I'm like, hang on a second, I'm paying rent. I'm giving away like money here, and all I'm doing is sitting in a fancy office by myself while I'm seeing all these people online. And that was my kind of cue to basically say, you know what, I'm packing up shop. I packed everything up. I moved out of the city entirely and moved out into the country. And that was it. The rest, as they say, is history. But in working in the online space 100%, you have to really start thinking outside the box because there's no reception staff. There's no one to answer the phones. And I work, at time of recording, I work 100% by myself, just as an FYI. And so having these systems in place means that I have a very efficient workflow. A lot of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight, I have them automated. And so that means I can quickly process people and onboard clients into my practice. I'm not spending oodles of time doing that sort of stuff. I've got a lot of resources, templates, I've got rough protocols, I've got all these things just lying around, so that when it comes time to, not something we're talking about tonight, but when it comes time to actually putting together personalized programs for people, I can now split the difference and I can offer personalized care without reinventing the wheel every time. And what that means is I can split the difference, and I'm not using cookie cutter stuff, but I also am not spending 20 hours, deep diving and doing these uber personalized programs, unless someone's going to pay you, $5,000, $10,000 or whatever to spend that amount of time. Sure, go for it. But that's most of us on this webinar. That's not where we're at. Okay, myself included. We're not there. So what I would like for you to do is I want you to just be committed to listening tonight. And you can just, give me a shout out and say, yes, are you committed to learning this stuff? I've gone through so many trials, tribulations. I've wasted tens of thousands of dollars on software, on all kinds of stuff that you can imagine, right? Super frustrated, all sorts of stuff. So I just want to know from you, this is really like for practitioners that are wanting to just take this on board and implement the stuff into your practice, right? Because that's what it's about. Okay, the stuff works. I know it works. It's what I'm doing. It's what I'm teaching other practitioners. And if you do it, you will start to see that things will become much, much easier. Okay, so more of the same here, right? So how many of us would want to enroll more of the right clients without feeling salesy, without feeling pushy or anything like that? Okay. All right, awesome. And how many of us would like to learn about systems that can help free up your time, help more people? Because that's really what it's about. Help more people, grow your business, get paid for doing what you love to do. All right, so let's jump into it. Right, the 3 pillars of the perfect intake are: pillar 1 is casual conversations. Pillar 2, the discovery call. And pillar 3, the perfect intake. And we're going to go through some of these. We're going to go through all of them pretty much right now. So how many people, looking at this here, when we talk about casual conversations, right? How many of you on this live session here, how many people working in a health food store, just out of interest? And you can just say yes in the chat box. Health food store, anyone? Okay, so some people in a health food store. Right. How many people perhaps working part-time in a gym? Anything like that? Any kind of space where you're in contact with the public? All right. So these types of casual conversations, I probably should preface this a little bit. These are conversations that you're going to have everywhere, because here's what, and I can guarantee this is happening to you. Once people find out what you do, they've got a bajillion questions, right? Even when you're in school. I remember being in school and all of a sudden people were like, and this was way before nutrition was as trendy as it is now. And people were like, oh, you study nutrition? You're into like health and wellness? Oh, okay. And then I've got this and I've got that. And what should I do about this? And what should I do about that? And so you start having these conversations, right? These casual conversations. But how many of us are having these casual conversations and nothing comes of it? Right. And again, this is a participation webinar. How many of you are having these conversations out there in public, whether it's at a cocktail party, whether it's at a kid's birthday party, whether it's at the health food store on the shop floor, wherever that is, people start asking you about their health and then it doesn't go anywhere. Does that happen to anyone? Because holy smokes, it happened to me for the longest time. Yeah. So people are some LOLs, some ha-has. Yeah. So often, right? It's happening all the time. And yeah, so exactly. So they always say, oh, I need your help. I need your help. And then what happens? Nothing happens. So how can we change that? What do we do? So before we get into that, here are some of the common mistakes that I see happening out there. And I'm using mistakes in air quotes because they're not really mistakes. I think for some of us, we might just not be aware of all of this. I certainly wasn't. And before I get into the mistakes, I'll tell you a story. You know, I used to work at the first Whole Foods in Canada. So going way back when, right? The first Whole Foods, Avenue Road, downtown Toronto. And that was my part-time gig. So I was part-time at the health food store. I was working like 3 shifts a week. I was teaching at IHN, and then I had my practice on the side. And that was me for like a couple of years. And man, I got a lot of clients from Whole Foods, right? I wasn't supposed to, but I kind of like navigated my way around that. But it got to the point where people knew when I was going to be working, and they would come to the store when I was working, and then they would like get me on the floor, and they would talk to me for like half hour, 45 minutes. You know, to the point where I'm just like, holy smokes. We actually had codes, so this was for a couple of us. We would get on the PA system, and it would be like, Brett, you know, there's a phone call for you in the back to try and get me off the floor. And I'd be like, oh, sorry, I got to go. You know, and this is how much time people spend. Now, spending too much time with people, you know, we're not being selfish with our time. What we're saying is, depending on the setting, right? So let's, for example, say you're at a cocktail party. Okay, things are going to be different because you're in a social setting, you're having a good time, you get engaged in a conversation. No one's saying, okay, your 15 minutes are up and pull the plug and off you go. We're not saying that. But if you work at a health food store, if you're working at a gym, if you're working at one of these like high traffic kind of places, spending too much time with people, it's never going to go anywhere. The other things that happen is when we spend time with people like this, they download you with certain things, and they ask you for information, but we never ever really tap into their health concerns, and more importantly, we never really tap into their goals, right? We never ask them like, where are you trying to get to? What's the thing? Because they're going to say, you know, so many people are still conditioned to, I have this type of pain. What should I take for the pain? Boom, end of conversation, right? I've got gas and bloating. What should I take for the gas and bloating? And so what we want to do is we want to reframe that whole conversation. Okay. We want to start asking them, maybe what else is going on, right? What are your goals? Where are you trying to get to? And what we want to do is we want to tell them how to do it instead of what they need to do. So this is a huge mistake, and I say mistakes in a very loving, careful kind of way here because we're givers, right? Is, you know, you tell people every single thing that they need to do for their candida, right? Oh, if you take olive leaf and oregano, and then, you know, you probably need some probiotics to follow up, and digestive enzymes are really important. And if you Google this, you'll find this really awesome book, and blah blah blah. You've just given away everything for nothing, right? And I'll sidebar for 1 minute as well. That used to happen to me in the beginning when I was practicing. I would like do an assessment or whatever and find out, you know, okay, this person really has candida issues. I would lay out the whole plan for them. They would pay me for 1 session, and I wouldn't see them ever again. And they would go to the health food store. They would get all the rest of the information from the internet, from the person at the health food store, and I would never see them again. And I had to hustle for new clients all the time. Right? So what we want to do is we just want to say, hey, here's what you have to do, right? You should probably go on a candida diet, and there's certain things that you need to take for your gut health, right? Recommending products and on-the-spot protocols, we do that all the time. That's what I was just talking about. Now, you know, without selfishly just talking about business, I don't like recommending products and on-the-spot protocols for another big reason. Because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to work. Why? Because if you're recommending these things on the spot, you are doing symptom control. You're doing symptom management, right? You're not getting to the root cause. That's the way I work anyway. I want to get to the root. I want to figure out why you have what you have, and not just simply treat what you have with supplements and food and whatnot. Okay, so we're actually doing people a disservice when we recommend products and protocols on the spot, I feel anyway. Okay, not getting their contact info. I mean, it seems like such an obvious thing, right? But how many times do they walk off and you go, oh yeah, okay, I'll come back in. They say, oh yeah, you know, I'll come back in next time, and you don't see them again. So what I did at Whole Foods, which worked very, very well for me, was I was not allowed to give them my contact information, and even now I don't really give out my contact information. I want to get their contact information. Because if you leave it up to people, guess what happens? They walk away from that conversation, and in an hour, they forgot about it, right? And they're moving on with their life. So when you have their contact information, you can be 100% sure that you're actually going to follow up with them. Okay, so very, very important. All right. And no follow-up, right? So that's the obvious one. The other big one is just selling them on your services, right? So people are going to say, oh, how much do you charge for this or for a consult or for a booking or whatever? And you just blurt the price out. But as we're going to see, when you just, when you just tell someone the price, they don't really, there's no value or context assigned to that price. So can you imagine if I just came out to someone and I said, yeah, so to work with me, it's $2,000. Most people would be like, sticker shock, right? What do you mean $2,000? That's insane, right? Why would someone pay $2,000 to work with someone like that? Like, that doesn't seem realistic. When in actual fact, most of my clients, the way that I structure things, and more importantly, the service, the value, the things that I include in my programs and packages, most people actually tell me that I'm undercharging, if you can believe that. Okay, so it's a different type of mindset, and we'll talk a little bit about money mindset in just a second. So moving on, all right, so we want to have these casual conversations where we're basically wanting to tee it up, and we want to say to people, hey, I'm in a health food store here, or we're at a cocktail party. This is maybe not the best place to get into all of this. Maybe invite them to a free consultation, discovery call, strategy session, whatever you want to call that. But the big question here is, should you even do a free consultation? Because when you speak to a lot of business people, right, how many business people say, don't do anything for free? I certainly learned that. I was told that for many, many years. Has anyone heard that before? Don't do anything for free, right? Always charge. Yeah, all the time, right? So always charge. You always got to charge money. Always got to charge money. Don't do anything for free. But here's the thing, if you're not giving something, how do you expect to get, right? There's reciprocity. There's reciprocation, and here's what this boils down to. This discovery call. This is not a sales call. This is not luring them into some kind of trap or anything like that. One of the biggest reasons that I do discovery calls is so that I can make sure that they're the right person that I want to work with. How's that for a flip? Okay? And once you start getting more people into your practice, right? And once you start maxing out, you have to be selective of who you work with. At least I feel like that anyway. I've had 2 or 3 clients in the last month that I've referred out to other people. I've just said, I don't think that we're the right fit. I don't think, and it's not to say that I'm judging them or I'm shunning them away. I'm genuinely saying that I don't think I'm the right person to help you, right? I think that someone else would be much better suited for where you're at and whatnot, right? But also, the discovery call, when you do it correctly, and we'll talk about that in a minute, when you do the discovery call correctly, what you're actually going to be doing is you're truly going to be finding out what this person needs, where they're trying to get to, and if you can genuinely help them. And if you cannot genuinely help them, if you cannot pinpoint what is going on, then you should not take them on as a client. Because you know what's going to happen? Your work with them will not be a smooth ride. I can tell you that right now. I've had those clients before. We've all had them before, right? Where you bring them on and you kind of make lofty promises. You tell them that it's all going to be good. And then, holy smokes, it's just like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into here, right? And now it's a hustle and now it's a grind and you're not having a good time. And trust me, it's no place to be. It will rain on your serenity in a very big way. Okay, so I'm a huge fan. I think if you're not doing discovery calls or free consultations or whatever, you should absolutely do them, right? You should absolutely do them. So, but there's a way to do them, right? And there's also some common mistakes that people make. Very similar to our casual conversations, but one of the biggest ones with discovery calls is that the conversation is not guided. Okay, this is very, very important. The conversation is not guided. I had a client recently that took up an hour and 15 minutes on a discovery call. I couldn't get a word in edgeways. She just downloaded me with her whole life story, whole health history, whole everything, and then proceeded to tell me that she didn't really have much faith in any practitioners at all. And I was like, I'm out. See ya. Right? Too much. Okay, too much. But what happens in that instance is, one, if the conversation is not guided, it's all over the place, right? It's all over the place. You're going to spend far too much time. Okay. Same as before, we're going to tell clients exactly what they need to do on that discovery call, and they're going to go out and DIY it. Okay, 100%. So I'm going to show you how to structure that in just a second. But the biggest one here as well, or a big one, is fear of selling. Okay, a lot of us have that fear of selling, that apprehension to share your offer. And to basically say, hey, this is what I'm worth, right? This is what I'm worth. This is what I have to offer. This is my program, my package, my service, however you have your clinic structured. And put that on the table and feel good about putting that on the table. And most of the time, the reason why people don't feel good about putting that offer on the table is they actually feel like they're charging too much. How many people on this call tonight feel like you're charging too much? Anyone? Let me put this another way. Would you feel comfortable paying someone else the fees that you're charging other people? It's a good question, right? Would you feel comfortable paying someone $700, $200, $2,000, whatever it is, for your type of services? Okay, you don't have to answer that. You can sit with that. But when we don't feel comfortable about that, usually it's because we internally and perhaps even subconsciously feel like the value that we're putting on the table doesn't align with the offer that we're putting on the table. Okay, let me share this and frame this another way. Because here's what happens. When you start talking about price points and all that sort of stuff, it's a race to the bottom, right? How many people are comparing each other? I get asked this all the time, okay? What's the going rate? I'm like, I have no idea what the going rate is. Why? Because I don't really pay attention all that much to what the going rate is. Because if you pay attention to what the going rate is, what is then going to happen, the natural evolution, is you're going to try and outcompete your competitors, right? Other practitioners. You're going to try and beat them on price. And what's going to happen, right, is your bottom line, the money coming in is going to get lower and lower and lower. You're going to actually have to have more clients to have a fully fledged business, and you're going to have to work harder because you've got more clients, right? So think about this another way. If I said to you, a good example here is cell phones, right? So if I said to you that this cell phone that I have, this is just a regular old iPhone, okay? If I go to Bell, if I go to Rogers, Verizon, AT&T, or whatever, they're all selling the phones for the same price, right? And what they're doing is they're saying, oh, you know, we found a way that if we buy 20 million iPhones or what have you, we can maybe get them for cheaper, so we can sell them for cheaper, and then we'll beat out Rogers or Bell or whoever, right? And so it's a race to the bottom on price. If you do that for your type of services, you will make less and less and less money, right? So how do we flip that around? What if I told you that I was going to sell this phone to you for $5,000? You'd probably think I'm crazy, right? You'd be like, well, I can just go to the store, and why would I pay $5,000 for this guy's phone? And what if I said to you, well, you know, on this phone is actually, I've got contact information for, I don't know, I'll just throw some random names out there. I've got Dr. Axe's contact information in here. I've got Dr. Mercola. I've got whoever, right? So can you imagine, like, big influencers? I've also got all of the login information for a $20,000 mastermind program that I did. And that actually helped me to really build my practice to where it is now. So you actually have that whole program, that mastermind program's on there. And that was a $20,000 program, right? And I can keep on going. So do you see what I'm doing now? All of a sudden, if I showed you that I have $100,000 worth of stuff on this phone, and I'm trying to sell it to you for $5,000, you're going to go, $5,000 is a no-brainer. right? Of course I'm going to do that. So what we want to do with our services is we want to think about how can we build and how can we bake in more value into your offer. Don't just try and cut down your price, cut down your price, cut down your price, right? Add more value. And so the way I have my clinic and my services structured, that's exactly why people say $2,000. I feel like I'm robbing you. That's what people will say. And why? Because I'm delivering a high quality of service. They're getting a lot of value from that. I give my clients my cell phone number, so that's part of it. I'm like, here, you just send me a text message. They're like, what? I can text you? I'm like, yeah, no worries. I'll get back to you in a couple of days at the most. Here's my email address. You got a question? Shoot me an email. I'm not going to charge you $20, $40 an email or what. And they're like, wow, okay, cool. This is great, because when you work with naturopaths or you work with doctors in the US or whatever, you can't even get on the phone for free. So do you see what I'm doing there, how we're building that value in? And so when it comes time to basically say, hey, this is how I work, all of a sudden people go, that makes sense. Sure. Like, let's go. So that's a big one, right? So if I really want to encourage you to just think about how you have these things structured and maybe just a bit of the mindset that goes around money. Okay. Another reason why money is a big issue for people is because for a lot of practitioners, especially if you're starting out, you're hustling to try and make some money. And so in the beginning, I used to do canvassing for a wildlife organization, believe it or not, right? So it was a complete like nonprofit. I would go door to door canvassing, and I learned something very interesting when I was canvassing, and it was from one of the guys, and I was like, man, I'm gonna go to the door and I'm gonna ask this person for like $100. At the time, I didn't have $100. I mean, I was like, $20 was a lot. So in my mind, I'm thinking, $100, like, oh my God, they're never going to give it to me. But you knock on the person's door and there's like a Ferrari in the driveway, then $100 for them is nothing, right? It's like some change fell out their pocket. So just because you think that things cost a lot, don't think that other people think they cost a lot as well, right? So stand firm and stand true in what your value is, right? And what you bring to the table. Okay, it's very, very important that you do that, because if you do that, you're going to feel so much better about selling your services, right? And sharing your offer with people. So one of the things that I kind of came up with over the years is what I call the 7-step client enrollment blueprint. This is a good kind of framework for you to follow along. It gets quite detailed and quite granular. But what I'll do is just go over the high level points here and the 7 steps. So the first step is obviously to establish credibility. Okay, now most of us would have established that kind of credibility in those casual conversations that we're having. We would have said, so the person says they have IBD. Okay. Oh yeah, so yeah, I've helped people with IBD. This is usually the approach that I've taken. Blah blah blah. Why don't you come and see me for a discovery call? Okay. Or maybe, we didn't even talk about this before, maybe you're establishing credibility out there in the public space already. So that's kind of where I'm at, right? So I get a lot of people that come in through the podcast. So I'll share a lot of stuff over the podcast, and as the shows go by and the years go by, people will go back and listen to those and they'll be like, oh man, like this guy just crushed it on an autoimmune podcast or a leaky gut podcast or whatever. And then they're like, I have this, and I've listened to this guy for hours now. I think he knows what he's talking about. Or they'll see me being interviewed or whatever. So for a lot of you, if we're working on social media, right? So a lot of us are on Instagram and we're trying to work that. That's a great way to establish credibility. And what you can do is you can actually have those casual conversations. You can have them through Messenger. You can have them through Instagram, Messenger, however that is. You can still have those casual conversations and ultimately funnel people in to that discovery call where you can really have face-to-face contact. So establishing credibility is key, because if you don't have that, everything else is going to fall apart beyond that. You want to get connected. Now, getting connected, really what it boils down to is putting yourself in the other person's shoes. It's a great way to get connected with someone. Okay, I've seen practitioners that are doodling on pads while they're in a consult. Just check their phone. Oh, just 1 second. All right. Okay, it's not good, right? Stay focused, stay in there, especially that discovery call. It's really important. Once you've been working with people for a while, then it's a little bit different, right? You build up more of a relationship with people, and it's like, oh, sorry, my wife's messaging me something about the kids. Give me a second, and that's fine. But on this call, they don't know you, right? So the whole idea here is to guide this conversation, is to get them enrolled into your services. So getting connected, another great way to get connected with people. A lot of us here, not myself, I don't really have the hero's journey. That's not my story. But for a lot of people, they got sick, they had autoimmune issues or eczema or whatever, and then they healed themselves, and now they help other people to heal those issues. And that's a great way to get connected with someone. And it's also a great way to niche down on your business, to be honest, right? To just say, hey, this was me. This is what I did. I healed myself. Let me help you. Great way to get connected with people. 3, guide the conversation, right? Super, super, super important. Guide the conversation. And what that's going to do is that's actually going to tap into a few of the other steps here. Do not let your client open the floodgates and just like have at it, right? Like my client, that was an hour and 15 minutes in and I couldn't even speak, right? Don't let that happen. Okay. And what we want to do when we guide this conversation is we want to identify their health gap. And what that health gap is really saying to them, where are you now? Where would you like to be? Okay, so what does optimal health look like to you? Right? Something that I use in my practice with a lot of my clients is I use what's called the river of health. And the river of health is basically, at the top of the river you have perfectly good health, and at the bottom of the river you have death, okay, which I know sounds morbid. But along the way, you've got different levels as you go down that river, right? We're on prescription medications, we've got pain, then we get surgery, so there's a whole way. And I show people that and I say, where are you on the river? Okay, so how do we get back? Or more importantly, how do we move forward to get you to optimal health? So what are your goals? Where are you actually trying to get to here? And once we've identified what that health gap is, we want to bridge that gap for them and say, great, so you're here today, right? These are the issues that we've identified as your core, maybe your 2 or 3 primary concerns, the things that we're trying to work on. This is where you're trying to get to, lose 40 pounds, reduce gas and bloating, clear up your skin. This is how we're going to do that. This is how I can help you. This is maybe how long it's going to take. This is how many sessions it might take. These are some of the things that we're going to deploy or employ. And, this might be a time where you could even bring in, for those of you who are doing functional lab testing and that, you might even say, I find this is a huge bridge for them, is I'll say, oh, you know what would be really good to look at here is really doing like a comprehensive stool test and a comprehensive hormone test, because you know what, everything else is going to be guessing. So if we do that, and then I'll show them sample reports and I'll send them stuff after, and they go, wow, like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, I'm in. So I'll tell you that from these discovery calls that I do anyway, I very rarely get people that don't sign up, which is quite different from a lot of people. And it's not because I'm anything special or anything like that. Yes, I've been doing this for a long time, but it's because I've got good at just kind of, and I don't look at all of this stuff anymore. I just do it in a very natural way, right? But for you, if you're starting out and you're watching this, maybe you want to kind of have some cheat notes or something like that as you head into this call. All right. So bridging the health gap is really key, because what that's going to establish here, all of this so far, is ultimately going to establish whether you and your potential client are the right fit for one another. Okay. Super, super important. 6 here, we want to transform doubts and fears into opportunity. I'm not going to get super deep into this, but everyone is going to have doubts. They're going to have fears. They're going to have objections and all that sort of stuff, right? So they're going to say things like, I don't have the money. They're going to say, I don't have the time. I can't do this. Right? I can't do it by myself. I don't have support, whatever it is. And this is a great opportunity to actually transform these things into opportunity, because when you start digging into the psychology of a lot of that, people are shooting themselves in the foot before they've even left the gates. They're subconsciously setting themselves up to fail. And they basically said, it doesn't matter. You could literally show me the step-by-step road, but I can't do it. and they will mentally put all of these blocks inside. And so anyway, so there's ways that we can turn these things and say, well, one example would be, well, if you don't have the time, well, let's talk about that, right? And if you look at your day, you go, you know what? You do actually have time. You're just not making the time for it. And if you value your health, what would it look like if you didn't make the time? What would it look like if we don't do anything here? Where do you think you're going to be in 10 years from now? And if you just say it like that, it's a very genuine statement. Most people are going to go, yeah, you know what? Like, I really can't afford to put on any more weight. I can't afford to just stay living with my digestive system the way it is, or my skin. I got self-confidence issues, So once people start thinking like that, they're like, yeah, you know what? And it's up to you as the health coach, as the nutritionist, as the practitioner. You're going to bring that person in and you're going to say, you know what? I got your back. Like, it's okay. We're doing this together, right? That's why I'm here. And I'm going to help you. So again, it's a very genuine way of doing things. We're not trying to coerce people here or anything like that. And of course, step 7, enroll your new client, okay, which is pretty cool. So yay, you have enrolled your new client. Awesome. So now we got all of that stuff wrapped up, right? We've got our casual conversations. We've had these productive conversations now. We've had productive conversations on our discovery call, and we've actually enrolled clients that we want to work with, right? And they want to work with us. They've put their hand up and they said, I'm all in, right? Great. So let's talk about the perfect intake. And obviously, every single person is going to be different. So what we're doing on this webinar is we're not talking about what the actual intake is, what signs and symptoms am I looking for, what tests am I going to use. That's just completely out of scope for what we're talking about here. But what I want to do is I want to show you how to set this up so that we can be very, very prepared for this intake. So the first thing that we want to be sure of is we want to be sure that the client is actually booked in. Okay, so remember at this point they would have said, yes, I put my hand in, you've sent them all of the information, you've sent them your intake forms, however it is you have your stuff set up, okay, and the person has now said, yes, I'm booked in, okay, whether that's in person, whether it's on Zoom, however it is you have your clinic set up. The intake forms and medical records have been completed at least 2 days prior to the meeting. Very, very important. How many of you here are filling out the intake forms with your clients while they're sitting in front of you? Anyone else? Anyone? No? Okay. Are you having your clients fill out the form and then bring it with them to their session? Is anyone doing that? Okay, so they fill out their forms and then, maybe you're working in a clinic with other practitioners, maybe you got reception staff, and then they walk in with their form. Okay, anyone? No? All right. Okay, so some people, I have them fill it out when they book their time. Okay, send it to them once they agree to move forward. Okay, so here's why this is very, very important, right? And I can tell you from my own experience, I used to fill the forms out. This is what my mentor told me back in the day. Fill the forms out while they're sitting there because they're going to screw up filling out the forms if they do it by themselves. Intakes were like 2.5 hours. I'm sitting there, and there's a couple of reasons why you want to do this, right? You want to do the intake forms. You want to have them submitted to you 2 days prior to your intake session. Why? Because you don't want to be blindsided. There's nothing worse than getting blindsided, right? So the person says, oh, I've got gas, I got bloating, I got hormone issues. Okay, cool. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there going through the intake and you're like, oh my gosh, you didn't tell me that you had like ovarian cancer. Or you didn't tell me that you had some super obscure autoimmune disease or something like that. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I don't really know what that is. I haven't had any time to prepare, and so you're going to be caught blindsided. It's happened to me more times than I can remember. So by doing this, what it does is it sets you up so that you can have a chance to review these ahead of time. You can go and look up some things, you can do some research, right, before, so that you can actually have a laser-focused, productive intake session. That's going to be 1 hour of hyper-focused, like next-level information gathering. You want to make sure that your client is paid, of course, right? And also, we would have reviewed everything. So make a summary. Okay, so we want to just make a summary. We want to highlight some key points. This is usually where I will look at some of those key points and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I need to dig into that a little bit more. I want to find out more info. I might earmark some functional lab tests for those couple of points. And so I'm going into this with a really solid summary so that I can be very, very efficient with my intake session. We would have noted some high-level theories as to what we think might be going on. And I tell you, when you start doing this, right, we sketch out a rough plan, potential lab tests, and so on. When you do this before, what's going to happen is the more you do it, when you sit down with people, your connection with people is going to go off the chart because you understand what's going on with them before they've even sat in the chair for the first time. That's very, very crazy, right? I never used to do it like that, and I started doing it years ago. And now I'll find that in the bottom of my intake session, what I have is I've got assessment, and then I've got plan, right? So the assessment and the plan. And I find that when I make notes in the assessment, I'll kind of put little things down like, yeah, I think Candida. Oh man, I think this person's got this going on. I think they got that. And when I'm doing the intake with them, I'll be like, you know what? How crazy is this, right? We've gone through all this stuff, and I actually had in my summary that I think you have these things going on. And they're like, oh wow, yeah, okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to run some functional lab tests to confirm that. And then when we get the lab reports back, they go, wow, okay, we know exactly what we're dealing with here. All right, all of this stuff notes that we've done all of this before we've even drafted a protocol. That's why I call this the perfect intake, right? Gathering the correct information so that when it does come time to put that protocol together, boom, you're going to be rock solid. But more than that, your client is going to have next level confidence in you and your skills. And so are you, right? You are also going to feel so much better about how you're running your practice, about working with people and stuff like that. So a couple of things here just on mindset and bedside manner. Always important to point out to people that this intake is an information gathering session, right? I always remind clients of that because they'll immediately at the end, they go, okay, so what should we do? And I'm like, nothing. They're like, what do you mean nothing? I'm like, well, I got to go away and look at some stuff here, right? So this is not a protocol session. We're not making recommendations unless it's something obvious, right? So, I mean, if you just identify, oh my gosh, this person has rip-roaring candida symptoms, I'm just going to send them a candida food list for now and maybe some recipes, and we'll just start there while I'm putting some other stuff together. Okay, but never draft protocols on the spot. I see this happen a lot, especially in the naturopathic community. Just these on the spot, literally chicken scroll on a piece of paper. And for me, that is just so unprofessional. It's so unprofessional and sorry to say, but it's very slack in delivering high quality service that's actually going to get people well. That is not the way to do it. All right. Listen and pay attention. The number one thing that I hear from people is that they are not heard. Okay, there's the naturopaths don't have time, the doctors don't have time, the specialists don't have time. No one has time to listen to them. And so when you pay attention and you listen to your clients and you hear them, and on the back end, you are being properly compensated for your time, you feel good, you got a good work-life balance and so on, that's a great place to be. All right. So we want to try and use positive, affirming, aspirational type of language, right? So where are we trying to get to? We can do this. Right? Here's what we need to do. Here's how we can do it. So you're really trying to future pace people. You're trying to, one of the things that I've done some training in is energy psychology. And so with energy psychology, it's not something I advertise at all. And I'm not an NLP person or anything like that. But with energy psychology, it's very different because what you're doing is you're showing someone where they're at. But instead of dwelling on where they're at, you're always showing them where they could be. We're always moving them towards the goal that they're trying to get to, okay? Which is very, very important for this type of work that we do. Never tell them how bad things are. Okay, I've seen this before. Oh my gosh, your leaky gut is absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible, right? Oh, hormones are just, really, really bad. Just, I don't know. Like people don't want to hear that. And I actually have a lot of my clients that will say, how bad is it? Right? They tell me, tell me how bad it is. And I'm like, no, there's nothing bad, right? It's all relative. And we're here to restore function. That's what functional medicine is. That's what functional nutrition is, right? We want to restore function. So it's not about how bad things are. It's simply to say this is the work that needs to be done and this is how we're going to get there. Okay, so positive. Do not attempt to diagnose their issues during this session. Okay, and I use diagnose in air quotes because obviously that's not what we do. But you know, you can really put your foot in it in these sessions when you jump too quickly to conclusions. And you say, oh, this person for sure, they have this. Sometimes I will say things like, you know, we should probably investigate that a little bit more. Maybe we should follow up with your physician or your gastroenterologist. And, you know, I think you might have, there's a chance that you might have Crohn's or colitis based on what you're telling me, but I don't know. So how about let's go and check with your GP and let's get some follow-up work to see if we can dig into that a little more. Instead of just saying, oh my gosh, I think you have ulcerative colitis for sure. And the person's like, what is that? Oh my gosh, and then they go on Google and they're freaking out. Okay, we don't want that for our people either. Always use a timeline. So using a timeline is absolutely key. If you're not using timelines yet, you should start because it's very important to see how things unfolded on a chronological timeline. And I can tell you, I've been doing timelines since day one. Okay, it was something that was drilled into me by my mentor. And I'm so thankful that he did that because timelines are pure gold. You can just see spikes in symptoms, you can see life events, you can see all sorts of things that happen on that timeline, and they can give you some very big clues and prompt you to ask some very, very important questions with all of that. Okay, and really, you know, you are a detective with all of this stuff, right? We're trying to figure out what is going on with someone, and the more information and the better and more accurate you can be with your analysis, the better the protocols and the treatments and the therapies and whatever that you're going to put together, they're going to work. Okay, much better. So I'm going to move on and just ask you a couple of questions. I mean, do you see how much more confident your prospects or your potential clients would be heading into this? And you can just say yes in the chat box or no. If you can't see that, that's fine too. What do you think, just setting it up like this? And by the way, you can automate a lot of this stuff, right? We can bring in technology and you can automate a lot of this stuff so that it's very, very hands-off and it's bam, 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 right? It's very, very seamless, right? Okay, so very confident though, right? Because we haven't just said, this is how much I charge, this is what I do. We've had lots of conversation with people to get them into our practice before we've even done an intake session. So that's one. Do you see how professional this approach is? Okay, especially once you bring in some of the technology and so on, right? It can be very, very professional. Do you see how much easier and more comfortable this is versus using sales techniques, coercion tactics, and so on? Because I don't know about you, but I never ever feel uncomfortable anymore. Just by doing it this way, I don't feel like I'm selling anything. I don't feel like I'm trying to haggle on anything. I'm just like, you know, I'm confident in what I'm doing and I feel like I'm giving very, very good service. And most people would agree with that. And I would love for all of you watching this, I would love for you to be there as well, because I know that this point 3 here is a very, very big sticking point for a lot of practitioners. They don't feel comfortable about selling their services. It's very difficult, right? And the last thing we want to do is resort to these, you know, slick sales techniques and all sorts of other stuff. Do you see how you could and how you can systemize this whole process? Right? This is a very neat 3-step workflow that you can virtually automate every single thing versus having this kind of hodgepodge, hit or miss kind of approach that maybe you're using now and that I certainly used or didn't use, I'm not sure, for so many years, right? No rhyme or reason, no systems, nothing at all. And most importantly, do you see how you could use these 3 pillars to attract the right type of clients? Very important, the right type of clients. And ultimately have a successful business doing what you love. Okay, so can we see all of that? Anyone in the chat box? Don't leave me hanging. Right, awesome. Okay. So if it's okay with you, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually share with you the advanced training that we have on this. It's a full workshop on everything. Is that okay with everyone if I do that? I always like to ask permission, all right? Okay, cool. All right. So I'm going to share this with you. And basically, the perfect intake workshop is exactly this. What I've done is kind of just boil things down because, if nothing else, I mean, even if you don't sign up for this workshop, I just want you to start thinking about your practice, right? And start thinking about, go back and watch this again and think about how you can start implementing some of these things into your practice and ultimately make your life easier. So, in this workshop, what we have is 6 hours of on-demand training. So everything is recorded. It's up there. You can go back and watch it 100,000 times if you want. And not only do we walk through the the reasoning and the thinking and the workflow, we actually show you exactly how to implement all of this stuff using technology as well. All right. So we have tech training in there. So from booking calendars, software, practice management tools, and all that sort of stuff, we basically show you a few different varieties because not everyone is ready to, I mean, I pay, I think $125 a month just for my practice management software. Okay, and that's a lot. I mean, for people that are just getting into this, it's a lot of money. I get it. Now, not everyone's ready to go there, so we have a few different scenarios depending on where you're at and depending on if you're just starting out or maybe you're trying to optimize your existing practice and streamline it. It all depends. All right. So tech training is in there as well. I've included a clinic starter pack, and I say starter pack in air quotes here because there's really so much stuff in there. I've included intake forms, food journal, protocol planner, intake summary, and waivers. So that's one part of that. Pre-screening questionnaires. So something that we didn't really get into here, and we are coming up on an hour, so in the interest of time, we just haven't had time to get into it. But pre-screening questionnaires, right? So one thing I have, and you can go onto my website, you can go onto holistichealthmasterclass.com, and you can actually check out what I have on my discovery call page, right? You can see exactly how I have it set up. And I basically have a questionnaire that people fill out before they even book that discovery call. And so what that is a pre-screening questionnaire. So when I have that discovery call, I already know what's coming up on that call. I'm not going to be blindsided, right? We got readiness assessments and then a whole bunch of add-on health questionnaires from how well do you detoxify? We've got hormone keys, adrenal thyroid questionnaires, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And what's cool is all of this stuff is in Canva. So we actually have a variety of, there's different things. Some of them are not in Canva because they don't need to be edited, but you can edit these, you can add questions, delete questions, you can brand them, you can do everything in Canva. We actually have an instructional video as well if you're not comfortable using Canva. Daniel's actually done a pretty good, very short little micro training on how to actually click the links, how to import them into your Canva, and then how you can customize them and edit them as well. But for those people who are not interested in branding them, or maybe you're not very tech savvy, we have these in Word and we have them in PDFs as well. So you can literally just print them off and give them to your clients. Okay, so there's that, and then what we have is the book as well, which is the client enrollment blueprint. That is actually the sort of expanded version of what I covered tonight, and it gets a little more into the nitty-gritty with things. So that's all included in everything. And what I wanted to do, because you are my people, right? So we're all nutritionists here. A lot of you I know already, you know me. And so we really wanted to start off on the right foot with you. As I said, practitioner paradigm, you're going to be hearing a lot more from the practitioner paradigm. We've got some really, really awesome things lined up at time of recording. I don't want to spoil anything because some of the stuff I feel is so exciting. And there's a lot of stuff that we're going to be doing front-facing, public-facing, where you can actually join us and you can kind of peek over our shoulder literally for nothing, right? So yeah, we've got a pretty exciting journey coming up. But this is normally $197. So for that training, I mean, we wanted to make it a no-brainer and really just get you started and help you. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to be doing that for 25% off. Okay, so that training is 25% off. And not only that, you can check all of the links below, right? So I think Veronica is going to post a bunch of stuff below where you can check all of that out. We're actually going to be offering 25% off all of our courses, programs, and workshops pretty much for life. Okay, so that is moving forward, and that is only for our people here in Networking Nutritionists. There are obviously also going to be some additional specials from time to time, whether that might be things like a Christmas special, a Black Friday, a Cyber Monday, whatever that is. All right. So definitely you want to just pay attention to what's going on in the group, and what you can do is also go on to thepractitionerparadigm.com. You can sign up for our mailing list. Again, we're just getting started with that, but Daniel and myself, we've been in practice together. Each of us has been in practice together for almost 20 years. So he's been at it for 20 years. I've been at it for 20 years. So I just feel I'm very excited to be doing this, because moving forward, I realize that if I want to have a bigger impact and help more people, I really need to start working more with practitioners, both on the business side of things, and that's really where Daniel comes in, and then also on the practice side of things. Okay, so we've got a bunch of stuff that's up there right now. You can get the perfect intake workshop. We also have some other stuff, so just click on the links below and you can check that out. And I'm going to say a huge thank you for giving me the time today to share this with you. And I would love to answer any questions that you might have moving forward here.
Thank you so much, Brett. I just popped the information about the perfect intake, and the coupon code is up in the chat. It will be posted within Networking Nutritionist group as well, as Brett said. So if you want to access that at a later time, it will be there. Both him and Daniel have offered some really awesome discounts for our group. So definitely check that out. I saw a question, or sort of a comment, that I want to pose to you as a question, Brett, earlier. Someone had said they find that many potential clients don't want to pay in advance. And I wondered if you might speak to that, how to overcome that obstacle.
Yeah, so it's a challenging one, and I totally get it. If people don't want to pay in advance, it's usually if they don't want to pay for programs or for packages, right? So like my programs are 6 months in advance. 6 months, like a 6-month package. That's how most people come into my practice. But I would say, if people are not willing or not wanting to pay in advance, there's a couple of things that you might want to point out to them. And the first one is, part of that river of health, which is included, by the way, in the perfect intake, is, I ask people, how long did it take you to get here? It's a very important question, right? So if you say to someone, like, let's say they're 60 years old and they've got arthritis and blah, 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 ask them quite simply, like, how long did it take you to get here? And they're going to say, it took me 60 years. Cool. So if it took you 60 years to get here, how long do you think it's going to take you to get back up the river towards better health? And they have to be honest with themselves. Again, this is not a coercion tactic. We all know this on this call. We know 100% that nothing is going to change in one session. Right? So that's important to tee that up as well and explain that to them, that, you got leaky gut, you got autoimmune issues, there's like 6 months is just to grease the wheels. You can get a lot of stuff done in 6 months, but nothing's going to happen in 1 or 2 appointments. Okay, so that's one. The second thing that I explain to people when they say that is, I'll always say to them, the bulk of my work that I do is always done upfront. Okay, it's very important to explain that to people, because they don't understand. We're not massage therapists here where someone walks in, I lie them on the table, and I massage them for an hour and I get my $120 and then I go home. That's not what we do, right? We have to go through all of their medical records. If you're doing that, you've got to look at that intake form before they come in. You've got to do a little bit of homework. You've got to make a summary. If you're doing functional lab testing, you have to interpret those labs. How many hours does it take you? I mean, now I've got super efficient. I can do 7, 8 protocols from scratch in a day. But that's because I got everything ready to roll, right? But how long are those protocols taking you to develop? So I always say to people, I say, listen, the face-to-face is actually the least amount of time that I'm going to be working with you, is the face-to-face. And the bulk of the time, especially in the beginning, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of development, there's a lot of things that have to go into that. Once we move forward, and once we're 6 months in, well, there's far less contact, there's way less research, because you've kind of sketched things out a little bit. You've got some traction, and that's where you're going. And so usually the way that I do it is, if people are, and I totally get it, not everyone is ready to come in on a 6-month deep dive transformation. Those are the types of people that I attract, because they've tried everything else. So they're just like, just I'm ready, you know. But I understand that a lot of people here, you know, you're not there yet. But what I would encourage you to do is I would encourage you to at least offer um, maybe lower ticket packages. So let's say, you know, three sessions as a starter. And, you know, that's going to be what session one is an intake session. Session two is, you know, basically sharing what you found, right? So report of findings, protocol. Session three is going to be a follow up. And if you do it like that, you know, people will usually say, yeah, okay, you know, I get that. That makes sense. And that way you can establish, you know, is this moving in the right direction? Are we doing well? You know, are we working well together? So, you know, that type of thing. And I find that once you do that and then people are in fact seeing some traction, then you can essentially renew that package. You can put them on a longer package and they're going to feel comfortable doing that. Okay, so hopefully that helps you. I mean, it certainly helps me with what I do, and I tend to have far less objections when I position it that way.
That's great. Thank you so much, Brett. I
No
don't
problem.
see any other questions coming in. So I'll give everyone one last second. If you have a question for Brett about the perfect intake or anything that he discussed today, just throw it up in that Q&A.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to say for everyone that's on here, because this is not going in the recording, all right, is we are actually extending an additional 25% for the perfect intake as part of Cyber Monday. We don't want to do Black Friday. I'm not doing any other Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals or anything like that. We're not doing anything publicly. But for everyone watching this now, you can basically, we're offering 50% off that training until Monday evening. So that I think it works out to $98 and 50 cents, something like that. So yeah, again, I'll just throw that out there for everyone on the call here. But I didn't want to include that in the actual presentation because it's going to be recorded and living in the group for forever and ever.
For a long time.
So yeah, okay, cool.
All right, well, I will pop that information into the chat one more time with that discount. The coupon code is there. The affiliate link is there that you need to access to unlock that special discount for just our group members. But after that, as Brett said, I'll have this recording up inside the group as soon as possible once the video recording is ready. So I don't see any other questions coming through. So I guess
Great.
we can let you go, Brett, and
Awesome.
wish everyone a good evening.
Yeah, thanks so much everyone for tuning in, and I'm in the group as well, so you know, you can tag me, and I'm there. I'm participating. Okay,
Wonderful. Thank you so much,
awesome.
Brett.
Thanks everyone. Have a great night.